this episode, we've got Mr. Gary Drake all the way from the other side of the world, much like Mr. Marshall from last episode. And yeah, so what's interesting about Gary is that he's completely different to the first two episodes in that he is a high-end custom builder in LA. And much like he's going to get into now, he builds houses for very, very rich people, pretty much, and very, very high-end people. And he's been doing it for a long time. So without further ado, Gary, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell the people what you do.
Well, good morning. I'm Gary Drake, a builder in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a pretty large area, so I'll quantify that. West LA, Beverly Hills, Bel Air, Brentwood, Palisades. I try to stick to, I'm fortunate enough to stick to just the West Side and stay busy. I very rarely venture out of that neighborhood, which makes it very convenient because that's where I live. And right now, so basically I'm just telling you what projects I have going, who I am in a little brief. You want to know how I started, or?
You can go into what you do now, and then we'll roll it back and get back to.
Okay, well, like for right now, I have four projects. One of them's wrapping up. I have one project for out of country client from Turkey, and most of the projects I work on, we have a lot of handlers. There's owners reps, there's personal assistants, there's attorneys. So there's like a whole team of people that we work with. It's not just the architect and designer, and they're in there too. So some of our job site meetings have like 10 to 12 people in it. The Brentwood one with the Turkey client is my first project where we built a funicular. It's like an acre and a half piece of land in Brentwood. And so there was like a kind of an upslope property. So we put the funicular up so we can put some guest houses on the top. We call them ADUs here. And so that was we just wrapped that up. Actually, we just moved the client in, and it was 11,000 square foot home we built also with a a pool cut into the hillside. It was it's not on my website yet. They want to do all the photographing of it, and then they'll let me publish it. But I did put some things on Instagram, and they had me take it down. Most of my clients are pretty private, and that was more of a contemporary. A lot of stone, a lot of custom steel doors and windows on the exterior. I'd love to have shown you some of the photos, but a great ballroom with 28-foot ceilings, domed, and linear diffusers. Just everything we touched was custom and shop drawings, and it was a very challenging project also because the client, as a lot of our clients, they come into town. This was one of his many homes. They come into town, and then they stayed at a hotel or they stayed at a new house they just finished building, and they want to change everything. So one of my most exciting things on that project is the owner hadn't been there in 6 months. He came into town and he said, "I don't need a screening room. I want a bedroom here with a bathroom." But there was just on the second floor, and there was no bathroom near, so it wasn't easy to get the waste, and the water's always pretty easy to squeeze in there. But that's just one of the smaller, whatever. I don't want to get too bogged down. I could talk about that job for the whole hour. I think we're going to be here. Then I have another project in Brentwood, and that's another project in Brentwood, about an acre and a half. I do or build a lot of historic remodels also. This is a Paul Williams architect. He's deceased now, but he's a famous architect in Los Angeles, and so those are always challenging to try to stay with the period and then bring it into the 22nd, the new times, all the new MEPs, and keep all the historic moldings and doors, and then when you do make them, you have to match them. So it's a little bit more time consuming with the shop drawings and doing the finished carpentry and getting it just right. That's a Paul Williams in Brentwood. Then I have another Paul Williams I'm restoring in Brentwood also. which this is my second time there. A lot of my clients are repeat clients. I remodeled half the house 12 years ago, and now we're remodeling the other half the house, and really bringing it to the into the period of she wanted to brighten it up, and there was smaller French doors. Now we put the big 30-foot bifolding French doors in to bring the inside out and the outside in, and it's all custom wood paneling, solid on the ceiling, on the walls, and we're doing a high gloss finish. Lots of stone shelves with hidden lighting, strip lighting in the shelving, and in the wood shelving in the library, we're doing the same thing. That's another one that'll be on my website soon. Actually, we're gonna be a party there too. She loves it.
That'll be fun, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That sounds incredible. I love these huge projects, and I've never got a chance to speak to someone who actually does them, but they come
I
up
wouldn't
all
say
the
my
time on
projects are
YouTube.
huge.
And
These are just average
yeah.
for LA. I mean, the biggest.
Yeah, exactly. That's
project
the thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
yeah.
from across the pond, right, in the UK, and in the UK, I don't know if you've ever been, but the houses are tiny. They're all like really clumped together. Like most houses are like attached. They're either semi-detached or terrace houses. I mean, my house, if you included the garden and the whole land around it, it's barely touching 1,000 square meters, if that. And even that's on the larger side of things as well in the UK. So to hear like these enormous mansions in LA and Beverly Hills is just mind blowing to me, especially. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners who are going to be 50-50 split between the US and the UK, that's basically how our guests are going to be split as well. I'm sure they're like when you said 11,000 square feet, I think I was like, the mind just going to go crazy.
Yeah, that's not like that's large for the average person
Yeah.
in LA. Don't get me wrong. I just don't quantify that as large. I mean, it's one of my bigger ones. I mean, my average home is like that I build is like 5,000 to 7,000.
Mm-hmm.
The other Paul Williams, but actually both those other two Paul Williams are both like 6,000 square feet. My house is 3,000. So yeah, everything's in thousands here. So,
Yeah.
but large to me is like 20 or 30,000 square feet. But and I haven't built that yet. That's my my next thing.
That's the goal.
And I have one job in Beverly Hills. I built a lot of homes in Beverly Hills, but my boys went to school in Beverly Hills. I have identical twin boys. They went to Beverly Hills School District since kindergarten. So I love the neighborhood. It's I mean, I love LA. I was born and raised here. So those are my four projects, and actually we've kind of slowed down, not because I've turned down a lot of work, but I've slowed down a little bit just to take a breather.
Yeah, understandable. How long have you been going for in custom builds specifically?
30 years, but I've been a licensed contractor for 40, actually over 40, 41 now. But I was a framing contractor. I didn't have the temperament. I started my business pretty young. I started when I was 26. So framing was more my thing, forklifts and saws and shorts and t-shirts or no shirts, and very loud, and custom residential is, especially the arena that I dance in, is very very complicated just in the paper trail. And all the personalities. I built a couple projects for Madonna, and I never even met her. So you're just dealing with handlers, and they don't want to make mistakes, and they're making decisions for the client that sometimes aren't the right decisions. So you have to document everything. So when they're not the right decision, you're not getting thrown under the bus. And lots of times where you just meetings go on for hours and hours, but I've kind of found a nice niche. I'm getting better at it. What's great about this industry, you never stop learning. But I could talk about me forever. But
oh, that's perfect. That's what we have you for. So that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think we always talk about finding your niche, right? We in the UK we say niche. I think in the US you guys say niche.
I say niche.
Yeah,
also, yeah.
Yeah. But it's so important to know that and understand that well, because that's what's going to allow you to find the clients that you want. Like you already touched on it before. You said you've turned down a lot of projects, and I think people, especially when they're starting out. I mean, starting out, not in contracting specifically, but in digital marketing, and finding the pool of people that you want to work with is so important because you tailor your whole business towards that. Like every single word on your website, every single ad that you might put out, every single word that you tell them needs to have that in mind about what the type of person that is and what are they going to resonate with. And at the end of the day, how you're going to get them, how you're going to sell them essentially what you do.
That's such a
Right?
good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, I wasn't so good at that. I'm getting better at that actually with um, keeping my mouth shut with people that piss you off.
Yeah,
Saying the right
yeah,
things. You
yeah,
know, it's a very the great thing is, you know, I keep learning, and now my twin boys, are working with me, and so I'm training them really well. Lot. I learned from a lot of rough people, so I'm a little rough. I'm a little rough around the edges still.
yeah. I mean, I think most GCs are right, especially when they're starting out, because like especially classical contractors, they're not as well polished or they're not as like suit
I
and
like that.
tie.
Yeah, well
But
polished.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I come from a family of contractors, and my parents and my grandparents are exactly the same. They're more rough, and granted, do a lot of work in Africa, right? So they do a lot of work around
Oh yeah, I can
Africa and
imagine.
East
Yeah, so
Africa. Yeah. So
yeah,
like,
they're
especially with the people they deal with, because they're like, I remember my uncle was even telling me a story a couple of months ago about like a really, really rich guy, right? Like nine figures we're talking, who wanted to build like a shopping mall in Kenya. And he basically said something that rubbed my uncle the wrong way. And he just swore at him and he left the room. Project was done, basically cancelled the whole
I just
project
walked. Just
just based
walked.
off that. Yeah, he just walked away. And in my head, I was thinking, wow, like, I could never do that. Like I couldn't get myself to do that type of thing, regardless of
Yeah,
what
no,
someone says. Yeah.
I've done that a few times. I I've I've learned to hold those type of that back. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can relate to that definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
tough.
do a lot. I do some speaking. There's like a lot of different speaking engagements I do in LA, or like West Hollywood and stuff. And I guess a lot of times when they introduce me, they go, "Yeah, this Gary likes to tell it how it is." So, but let's
Yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, it's good. You need it sometimes with the right people. Sometimes you just need to be upfront and you need to be just straightforward with the problems that happen essentially. But yeah, I mean that's interesting. So let's rewind back, right? You said you were in the industry, in this building industry for like 40 years, 41 years now.
Well,
How
actually, as
were
a
you right in
licensed
the beginning?
contractor,
Yeah.
I started digging ditches when I was 15.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so if you take that into
Yeah.
consideration, so I've been in the building industry for 52 years.
Wow.
I'm 67. Actually, I'll be 67 in a couple days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's incredible. But
Yes, and,
I mean,
I mean, I
there's
did break away from it. It wasn't a straight through. There was, I was like a truck driver for a while, and I was a
yeah.
salesman for a while, and but pretty much my first stitch was 50 something years ago.
Yeah. That's interesting because you went through like different paths. You started in the industry. Sounds like you left it for a bit, up at like trying different things, and you came back, right? How was that
Yeah.
from? Yeah, yeah. Go on.
No, go ahead. I'll let you finish your question.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, what made you leave the industry at first? Obviously, you were doing that classical, right, 9 hours in the sun type of jobs, the laborious jobs, digging ditches in the beginning when you were 15. What made you want to try something different, or did you always have in your head that you were going to come back to the construction
Well, there
industry
was
eventually?
choices that were made for me. I didn't even have a choice.
Okay.
I started digging dishes in a reform school, so,
Oh wow. Yeah.
so I was sentenced there. So
Yeah. Oh wow. Oh wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So then in that same place they had a truck driving opportunity. So I started driving
Mhm.
trucks.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then I started working with cattle at the
Yeah.
same place. So most of my different things that I adventured was at the same kind of reform school I was at for 4 years.
Yeah.
then I actually learned how to do. I was a salesman there also because it was fundraising. So I did like 7 different jobs there. So the best thing there is I learned how to work my ass off. I didn't really go to school. So that
Yeah.
was like most of my jobs. And then when I left there at 19, I pretty much stayed in construction from 19 till now. I left. I did left for a little while and did window tinting and installed blinds for about 6 months and realized that construction was my thing. And then so since like 23, 22, I've been all in with construction. You know, I mean, there's been those ups and downs, but you know, the depression, the recessions, and so you know, but never did I think that I wanted to get out. Matter of fact, now I have the bug even more to want to grow my company than actually I want to grow my company just as much now as when I started my company, which is pretty cool. But I don't want to work. I'm not a workaholic now. When I first was in business, I never stopped working. So now, you know, I'm not a 9 to 5. You know, I put my, you know, 6 a.m. to 6 at night, you know, 5 days a week, pretty much. And then the weekends, you know, I don't shut the phone off, but I do, you know, I put my family first. I have 4 children. So when you put the family in there, you know, you learn to maneuver it all. But I still have that yearning and that desire to grow the business as much now as 40 years ago, which is really cool.
That's really interesting, and you very rarely people have that drive, right? Like, especially if you've been doing it for as long as you said you have. Like, I was speaking to Mr. Marshall Wilkinson, who's in episode 2, and he was talking about how, because he did commercial contracting, and he was talking about how when he was, you know, in his early 20s, he felt like he had a gun to his head when he was working, and he had that like ultra zeal and ultra drive to basically succeed. And then he was talking about how now he probably doesn't have that as much, where he's more laid back and he's a bit more relaxed, right?
Well, I'm definitely more relaxed.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you don't have as much stress.
My
Yeah.
wife and my kids can tell you that. That might have to do with the meditation I've been doing for 10 years now. Whatever. but,
Yeah.
but no, I think the new zest or excitement is you know, bringing my young boys into the business. And you know, having them go to college because I didn't do the college thing, and you know, blueprint reading, job estimating, construction management, and you know, now one of them's been, you know, is actually running the job. I mean, he's, you know, very challenging for him, and I have to go there every day myself. But and then his younger brother, by 7 minutes, he just started with me. So that's maybe that might have a little bit of my new excitement. You know, I'm not just looking, you know, people ask me when I'm gonna, you know, I'm not just looking to get out. I'm looking to you know, build it with them, and there's just so many new products and challenging. The industry is never a dull moment. You know, you never stop learning. I guess that's in life in
Yeah.
general. You know, when a subcontractor says, "Oh, I've been doing this for 30 years," you know, it's like, well, maybe you've been doing it wrong for a few of those years. This is the way this is the
Yeah.
way we do it now. And so
Yeah.
just, you know, with all the new waterproofing and codes, yeah, there's every time you turn around, there's 7 more codes, 10 more codes in Los Angeles, and it's only getting
Yeah.
more difficult with all the green stuff going on.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing. Like, that's just a whole other ball game, isn't it? The sustainability side of things and technology and
Yeah, some of the
carbon
stuff
neutral and all that. Yeah.
is just like you scratch your head and we say, let's take the rainwater and put it into a tank, and then take the tank and then pump it to the street. What?
Yeah.
My client's gonna spend $200,000 to take it all here, put it in the tank. When the tank fills up, it all goes to this. Whatever. That's one of my. I can't figure that one out.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
It's interesting. But yeah, so like, would you're definitely a first generation contractor then, aren't you? And then your sons will eventually,
Yes,
if
I'm
they
first
follow you,
generation.
then
Yeah.
they're going to be second. Yeah, that's really cool. And I think I myself have kind of broken the cycle. My dad still does the work in Kenya. My granddad did. My great granddad also was like a contractor, half laborer, half contractor. So I love it when, you know, families have that generation going on over and
But it's
over.
in
And
my
it's
family.
interesting.
My uncle and my 5 cousins were all in the. But
Hmm.
for my mother and father, yeah, that none of them were in the business.
Yeah, that's so cool. Right. Okay
Well, it's
then.
also
In terms of
there's a shortage. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think you don't have a
the
labor shortage, but we have no, we have a labor shortage. I mean, of qualified labor. There's plenty of
yeah.
uh, you know casual labor, but there's not much qualified labor. It's getting for every person that every 10 people that retire, like maybe one or two are coming in. So my boys are going to have a challenging time. I definitely be retired by the time it gets. Well, I don't think I'm really going to retire. I think you're going to find me dead in a job shack at 92. I hope. He
No, I
arrived.
mean,
In a big job shack with a bathroom in it.
yeah. No, I'm sure you'll have a good ending as well. Hopefully, I think hopefully we'll have a good ending and a nice peaceful one anyway. Um, but I mean that's an interesting thing that you just said as well because we touched on it in the last episode. But people, the new generations nowadays, they are very against that whole idea of spending 9 hours doing hard labor or just doing anything physical that's too difficult. They'd much rather
Oh, don't get me
find
started on the
easier
new
ways.
generation.
I mean, it's just a
I
whole.
think we
These are
could
completely
steer this
different.
in another, but go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's just a whole different.
my
Yeah.
my boys went to school in Beverly Hills, but they're of the they were raised, knowing how to work. They were both wrestlers. They were in a sport, so they know how to lose. They know how to
Mhm.
win. They know how to put the hours in. I think, wrestling is like one of the craziest sports physically and mentally. And so you take that. I mean, I tell my boys that you wrestled for 4 years, you can do anything. You know what I mean? You
Mhm.
really can. It's just about, but the new generation, yeah, a lot of them, they want to play on computers and make millions of dollars. A lot of them are too. I tried to steer my boys into doing stuff. I wasn't one of the parents that like pushed them into this industry. They needed to want it. You know what I mean? I did not push it on them at all. I mean, I had to work some weekends and a little bit in the summer, but both of them said, yeah, I want to come work with you. One of them, I made him an offer he couldn't refuse also.
Yeah.
Because he was working with in the heating and air conditioning for his uncle, and then I just said, okay, it's time to jump in with dad.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
whatever, yeah. So
Exactly.
the younger generation, that's the other reason we're gonna have a hard time getting labor here.
Yeah. I mean,
And that,
that's a big problem, and in the UK specifically, there's a big issue with the aging population as well, where
and you guys have
people are.
right.
Yeah. I mean, labor isn't as bad in the UK as it is in the US. Definitely, that's for sure. The quality is definitely getting worse though. Like especially here in the UK, there's a lot of migrant workers that I've just met that there's a lot wider range now in terms of costs of labor. Like now you can get someone as cheap as 50 quid a day, which is like, I think in dollars, that's like $70, $60 a day. Before you couldn't really get that. But in terms of like anything good or semi decent, the labor you're going to expect to pay is upwards of £100 a day, £150 a day. Um, so it's definitely that's a challenge, and that's still a
Well, so
challenge
much of the
now.
UK is masonry too, isn't it? I mean, everything
Yeah,
is masonry
yeah,
and brick, and I mean,
yeah.
are there many people growing? Is there many more apprentices in that industry that are following in the footsteps of their father?
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that's promoted in the UK, and I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but kids or people that supposedly aren't going to do well in school, they're pushed towards like that becoming an apprentice in
Yeah, I can relate to
construction.
that.
Yeah, that happens a lot, and it's interesting because I feel like construction industry, it's so complex and it's at the same time it's so rewarding. If anything, the best brains should be pushed towards that as well as people who maybe aren't doing so well in school, because it's such a numbers game at the highest level. It's so like on a macro scale. There's so many moving parts, and like you said, it's it's so difficult with all the different variety of projects that you're going to do. Even though on a micro scale, when you're doing like the hard labor, it's fairly simple. Like it's doing the A to Z over and over and over again, right? Like laying brick. Um, but when you try and create a company and you're trying to create a successful business, especially at the levels that you mentioned in terms of like the size of these projects and how expensive they are and how much they cost, you need like you really need to learn the number side and you need to have like a really good understanding. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting one. But 16, 17, usually in the UK, people would leave school, become an apprentice, work on the tools is what we call it for about 5, maybe even 10 years, and then they start their own thing. That's usually like the route that everyone goes down. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much how it works. But in terms of your projects then, and the size of your projects, what's the biggest project you've done?
The biggest one, dollar volume is the one I just finished with the funicular. That was the 11,000 square feet, and then the whole hardscape, was about an acre and a quarter, acre and a half, with pool into the hillside and landscaping all. We spent millions of dollars on the hardscape and landscaping. Matter of fact, we're still doing a little landscaping now. I think they added. They were shoving it out of the garage. That's where we ended up setting it. We kind of worked our way out of the property. Our office ended up in the garage, and we just moved it all out
Yeah.
on Monday and Tuesday. And then we want some more planting, so we're doing a little bit more planting. But that was my largest dollar volume, and then my largest square footage wise, which I didn't do a lot of work on the house, so I'm not claiming that it was a 22,000 square foot house, but I just did a little bit of work on it. The big work I did is I built a 3,000 square foot. My first project was a 3,000 square foot guest house, and then I came back like 10 years later and built another 3-story. That was 2-story. Then built a 3-story with subterranean parking, a garage above it, and then another guest house on top. That was like 7,000. That was on the same property. So the whole property was like about 40,000 in square footage. But I did it in 2 parts, and I didn't, really do that much on the 22,000 square foot house. So that was my second largest dollar volume and square footage, and now I think I've just built so many. I mean, then I'm building my second dollar volume one is I'm building right now in Beverly Hills. It's a 7,000 square foot house. It's a remodel. It's not a new construction, and it's like the pool was here, and they just wanted to move it over 3 feet. So
Yeah.
But you just can't like slice into it. We had to dig the whole pool out and recompact and then start from scratch. So it's those are the type of clients I work with. Which realistically, when you took the new plan for the hardscape and the landscaping, it totally made sense to move that pool over 3. I think it was 3 or 4 feet max, 4 feet max, because it was too close to the wall and there was no way to really set up any lounge chairs or. So really, now they have planting and they have some chairs they can lay in. And so it totally made sense now that we're rounding the corner, pouring our concrete in the backyard. But that's my third claim to fame. And then I've worked for celebrities, but none of them I've ever met. I worked for Sting, Rod Stewart, Madonna, but that's not my claim to fame. They never brought, it was fun projects. I just dealt with their lawyers and project managers and designers and architects.
Yeah. That's incredible though, like hearing that type of that volume of project and that size of project is crazy to think about. But you've been in the industry you've been doing custom building for a while. What would you say your turning point was where you went from like just a regular GC to actually being able to do these projects?
Oh, I forgot about that project. This is my first project as a big project as a general contractor. This was actually pretty big, but there was a partner involved, so it wasn't just I've had a couple partners along the way. So the recession, the '90s recession, the '90s recession. It hit me pretty hard. I was a framing contractor, mainly framed commercial, and commercial just dried up. And I'm not sure if any of the listeners will know, but the story goes, I was at home watching Bonanza reruns. That's like a TV show in the U.S. It's a Western, and just kind of twiddling my thumbs. Luckily, I had a stash of. I was doing a little snow skiing in there too, and doing a little traveling, but I had no work at all. And my forklift was in storage, and I got a call to bid a ballroom for an associate that I knew. It was actually Rod Stewart's old house. A new owner bought it. It was a 17,000 square foot house in Bel Air. So I went there to frame this, to bid the ballroom, and he had a lot of different labor crews on this 17,000 or 20,000 square foot house. And I noticed some of the tools were like, the framers' tools looked like a handyman. They didn't look like a true framer tools. And I go, what sort of framers you got here anyways? Well, I get them from the day labor place. I go, hey, I took him to lunch. I said, hey, look at, this was Friday. Hey, look, at Monday, I can show up with like 2, 3, 4 guys. Let me know. And he said, nah, show up with 2 guys. And so I showed up with me and 2 other guys. And that's how I got into general contracting. I started working with him, doing framing throughout the project. I bid the ballroom as a framer. I built the ballroom. Him and I teamed up. We finished that 17,000 square foot house and the pool and the ADU. And that was in the 90s. That's kind of when framing dried up, I switched into, on that project, we became partners, and I finished the house with him, and we built a lot of other projects. And then we decided to go our own ways, and he's doing great. He wanted to build America, and I didn't want to build America. I didn't want 50 employees, and I learned. He was newer in business, and I learned a lot of lessons that he hadn't learned, and he didn't want to learn that from me. And so actually his business is way bigger than mine, but I didn't want all the 50 employees and stuff. So, but
yeah, I mean
that's how I got it generally. And it was Brad Bell, who's in the entertainment industry in LA, is the owner of that house. He's a really nice young man. He was actually, I think he was like 30 when we were building for him. It's and that's how I got into generally, and I've been generally ever since. So that's been about 30 years of generally contracting only, and then it just grew from there. And then I thought I didn't want to. When I left my partner, I figured I just wanted to build one job at a time and run it myself, and that didn't last. I'm not a one job kind of person, so I think I built one job, and then I pretty much. From then on, I kind of been building 4, 5, 6 projects at a time. My sweet spot's like 5. I had my biggest dollar volume last year in business in 40 years, which was nice. So things are good, and this year's looking really good also. So things are really even with the high interest rates in LA, things are still really moving here. It's slowed down a little bit. What's happening now is the commercial industry is pretty much shut down, and so there's a lot of these and developing shut down. So now there's a lot of good developers that are now just doing general contracting for other people. So
I mean that's interesting, because LA seems like one of those places in the world that's like a lot of people say is unaffected by how the market moves, especially places like Beverly Hills, right? Beverly Hills, I'm sure. I wanted to hear your perspective on what happened in the market there when, for example, I mean, you already know, like when the recession hit, or even recently when COVID happened, right? Like, how did that affect the market in Beverly Hills, or was it just completely untouched?
We kind of hit 2 topics. COVID, we'll go with that because that happened before the interest. COVID, for the industry was great because there was no traffic. Because we were essential, so I don't understand why we were essential and other businesses weren't. I think that whole COVID thing's a whole nother story. But so luckily for us, they just had a lot of policies and procedures in place. If you followed them, like we had a job in Santa Monica, we call it Soviet Monica because they're very, ruleristic and, very, very challenging to build in. So I warned my superintendent there, I go, hey, look, if they're going to come inspect us, okay, I know for sure, Santa Monica, they're coming, so be ready. So we had our little wash station and our mask, and the whole 6 feet apart. We never really paid attention to how do you build a place staying 6 feet apart. Excuse me, scoot over a little bit.
Yeah.
But so when they came and did their inspection, we passed with flying colors. And he was the most stubborn superintendent too. He was like, I don't wear no freaking mask. So so luckily when they showed up, he was wearing his mask. And so but our industry, knock on wood, I didn't feel anything. I mean, a lot of people, I had one job where, and I knew nothing about COVID, and someone got COVID, and I shut the job down. And then the owners of the house are commercial developers. So next thing I know, the owner's rep is getting emails from the attorney. You better open the job back up. And I'm going, so I guess no one really told me to shut it. There's no rules I'm supposed to shut it. So I go, hey. So there was some challenging points like that. All I knew was I didn't want to fight with the lawyer. They said open it. So I just went back and opened it. So we figured out, we kind of, masks and, I got, we shut a couple jobs down for a few days and then recuperated and figured it out. So there was some light manpowers, because what happened was when a subcontractor, like the finish carpenter, would get COVID, then they would take it back to the company, and then a whole bunch of them get COVID. So next thing you know, I have no crews for 2 weeks. So things did slow down, and we did get some job extensions through all that. But luckily, work was flourishing. It just was, and there was no traffic. So,
yeah, I mean that's yeah. Oh yeah.
And what was it? And then the present with the high interest rates, and the high material rates, it has. I mean, when people get their bids, I mean, they always go into sticker shock when they get their bid or their budget. But now they really go into sticker shock. I mean, $2 million. A $2 million job is now $3 million. So it's like they start off with this budget of, okay, and the architect and designer say, yeah, this is $2 million. And then all of a sudden you put the bid together and it's $3 million. And then I just lost a few jobs like that also that I really wanted, because they found, if you look hard enough, it's very easy to find someone that meets that budget that you want, unfortunately. But usually it gets, usually doesn't go well. But then also what's happening too, most of my clients are cash and carry. There's no, I think I have one of my projects now is that there's a lender, but that was just because when they got the loan, it was cheap, like we call it cheap money, low interest rates. Mm-hmm. So now they probably would just be building out of cash because the interest rates are so high.
Yeah.
So, so interest rates, mini recession, and COVID, knock on wood, has not affected the arena that I say dance in or work in.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to compare, because in the UK, for COVID in the UK was crazy in a few different ways, in the sense that the demand was at the highest it had probably ever been in terms of people wanting work done. It was crazy, because it makes sense, because everyone was at home for like the best part of 8-9 months at least,
right.
And they wanted their kitchen doing or their bathroom doing. So remodeling and renovation jobs were at their peak. But then what happened, because of that, labor went through the roof, and material costs also went through the roof. So there was this really interesting dynamic where there was all this demand for work, but then the margins for a lot of contractors were squeezed so much during COVID, where they weren't making much anymore. And then the last year specifically, I mean, in the UK, I don't know what it is in the US, but in the UK, the most construction businesses have gone bust since 2008 recession. The last time I checked, so the last year has been tough for UK builders. Obviously, the best of the best aren't going to feel it anyway. Generally, the market that's what it's been like in the last year.
So a lot of people crash and burned in the UK, huh? Contractors. Oh,
yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah. The last year, especially end of 2023, a lot of even major like 9-figure companies, they just went bankrupt, which is crazy. It's slowly stabilizing now. It's probably due to a few reasons. A lot of the UK government made a few bad decisions, and it all happened at the same time, pretty much. Like COVID hit, They left the EU, which shot up shipping costs and importing costs and all of that for materials. At the same time, the war happened between Russia and Ukraine, which
Oh
the
yeah.
UK is really reliant on Russia for their gas, so energy prices went up through the roof in 2022. So a few things like combined together and just basically caused havoc. But things are slowly stabilizing, um, which is better now. But yeah, that was pretty much what the situation was. But yeah, I mean, it's cool to hear your side of things because Beverly Hills and those type of neighborhoods are really like feel like they're in a bubble of their own. Like everything that happens in Beverly Hills kind of is more applicable just to Beverly Hills. Um, in terms of building homes in Beverly Hills, right? How does that compare to just building your average, you know, average Joe's home?
Well, I don't know. I don't build average homes. They
Yeah,
don't call me.
yeah.
Well, like for
I mean,
example, I mean, for
yeah.
lack of articulating, like there's like different neighborhoods. So like, like if someone calls me out of that, like in Westchester, I mean, you won't know, but
Mhm.
Westchester's by the airport. There's still multi-million-dollar homes there, but my price points don't work in Westchester. So I won't even bid a project in Westchester because I know I'll just be wasting my time. Unless a client has a son or a daughter that I built for the parents and they have a home that they want me to remodel in Westchester for their kid, then, and they understand my price points, then I would work there. So, but there is big differences. And then just like the people in Westchester would not be able to come in and they underbid me in Beverly Hills, but they wouldn't be able to bring the quality and all the complication that goes, the parts that go into building a luxury home. So, so there is, I mean, there's the difference, 100% difference in pricing too. I mean, I'm most of my homes right now run from anywhere from $800 to $1,200 or more a square foot. And,
Yeah.
Westchester, you could build for about, I don't know, I guess 4 to 5, I think.
Mhm.
I remodeled a home recently in Westchester, but it was for my brother. So,
Okay. Yeah.
and and that was just because I didn't want them, and that was just like right after the recession and things were going crazy, and I didn't want to leave them to the wolves because, and it was, so I did build it for them, but it was very challenging for me because I
Yeah.
did have to help them financially on the price points and stuff. I'm not sure if I answered
Yeah.
your question, but so
No,
I just kind
you
of
did. Yeah.
I stick to my neighborhood or my neighborhoods, just because of the type of architects I work with, the type of designers I work with, the type of quality that's demanded, the reputation I have. The good thing about Los Angeles, or I should really say like the west side of LA, because Los Angeles is so giant. It really, really is. So the west side, there's a lot of really, good contractors and builders here. And, it's because I come up against them all the time. I mean, we kind of all know each other, but don't know each other. So when and then there's like certain people that are bidding a job that if I find they're bidding it, I'll just won't even bid it, that are good
Mhm.
contractors too, but there's ways to play the game and manipulate numbers and at the beginning and then end up being at the same price. I try to, my company's based off being, just a straight shooter from the very beginning. I don't want anything I don't earn.
Mhm.
I don't need,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's linked to that, but in the UK, a lot of contractors are changing the way they do their pricing, especially because of what I just mentioned with the recession and the material costs and margins and all that complications. Are you very much, do you basically price your jobs based on fixed price contracts or do you lean towards cost plus?
yeah, I don't work to a fixed price. I think I've done one guaranteed max in the last 10 years. And that worked out for me good, but I really fattened it up a lot. And we used
Hmm.
every penny. So thank goodness we went in with a heavy number because
Yeah.
those were a tough client. That was a tough client. It was probably that was matter of fact. I was talking with the estate manager. They have a state manager that manages all their properties around the U.S. They have properties everywhere, and then there's the house manager. So the estate manager, I called him and we're kind of buddies. I try to get in with the people that really kind of run the stuff, which is really smart, because he rubbed me wrong a few times and I just like sucked it up and go, okay. So we became good buddies. Make a long story short, I asked him, hey, look, can we photograph the project? And he goes, whoa, let me email them. They both responded back to his email. He said within 10 minutes, yes. He goes, it's funny, Gary, I've never, they're always building. I've never had anybody photograph it before because we always ended up in a bad place. And you know, with the other contractors, because like the house, there was the house was like 18,000 square feet that was already remodeled. Beautiful work too. And they needed another room. So we did an addition and a subterranean off like the living room area. Built this really beautiful addition with, 24-foot ceilings and steel, 20-foot steel doors, and just a gorgeous room. And he goes, no one's ever photographed the project. So just cut to the chase is that, they liked me at the end. So I've learned how to suck it up, because they were really rough. They were definitely the roughest pair of gentlemen I've worked with before. And that's actually on my website.
That's interesting, the amount of different variety of people that you'll meet. And I don't know if you even want to answer this question, but what's the most interesting, I say interesting in quotation marks, right? What's the most interesting client you've ever worked with? Or I guess you could say difficult client that you've ever worked with. Or do you have any crazy stories about that?
I have one right now that is the most difficult. I'm on my fourth superintendent there, because the guy that started the job, who'd been with me 30 years, was going to finish the job, then retire. He goes, this. So he retired, and then I won't get into the whole horror stories of superintendents, but he's challenging. Yeah, I've said some inappropriate things to him. He when clients go below the belt and gut punch you and just go too far, before you'd smack me a couple times and I'd go off on you. Now you got to hit me about 7 or 8 times, and when I didn't like. You don't want to say anything you can't come back from. So luckily, the best thing about some of the people I work with, or some of the owners reps I work with, there's owners reps that are like that too. When I'm sure there's a better way to articulate this, but when a person knows they can be an asshole and you treat them the way they treat you, they're accepting of it. But some people, at least everybody, like this gentleman that I'm talking about, he knows he can go below the belt and say stupid stuff. So when you slap him back, he can handle it. But I don't slap him the way I'd really like to slap him. But
the light one, yeah.
I'd love to tell you what I said, but I'm not going
to.
But so my son's there. My son's actually finishing that job, because there's the third superintendent of mine. The client rubbed him so wrong, and that he just could not, because when you have somebody that's abusive, a grown man can only take it so much, you know what I mean? And he sucked it all up, but he just started doing like apprentice mistakes. So I when he said we kind of came to a mutual agreement. It's just like, I think you should go. I think this guy wore you out because you're not paying attention. So I'm on it right. I'm still knee deep. They're living in the house, thank goodness, but I still have the hardscape to finish. We're finishing this. This is like the historic remodel of Paul Williams, which that just throws another element. And there's not an owner's rep. Most of my projects, when I'm dealing with wealthy people, there's an owner's rep. So there's a middleman to take the change order, to take the time extension, to take the plans, the designer plans, the architect plans, and assemble it, the landscaping, all the specialties, and help assemble it and deliver it to the client so they understand it. And so when I'm in the midst with my project manager and myself trying to deliver this information with a homeowner that hired a cheap architect, that didn't want to pay the designer to do the drawings, that didn't want to pay for an owner's rep, and try to bring all this to him with an attention span of a gnat. The owner. It's yeah. So I'm still knee deep. Matter of fact, I have a meeting with him today. My meetings are Wednesdays, so I have a little routine. You want to hear my routine when I go to meet with this guy? Okay, I'll tell you. I make sure I'm well fed. So I meditate for 20 minutes before. So I feed myself, I meditate, and I get there a half hour early for my 1 o'clock meeting, and I have a mantra I say when I see him. Okay, this might be going too deep into your podcast, but I love you. I'm going to say the guy's. I can't say the guy's name because I love you, whatever his name is. I love you, whatever your name is. I love you, Fred. I love you. So every time he starts gut punching me, I say in my head, I love you, Fred. I love you, Fred. I love you. And it works. I've had two good meetings and I haven't smacked them back. Not smack them back, but not argue with him or. And when I have my differences with him, because you can't have a meeting and not have a difference with him, because he just knows so much about the building industry. It's just amazing. The best meeting was, now you better ask me some questions, but one of the best meetings was he's screaming at me, literally, like, "Rah! Everybody listens to me, everybody, Rick," that's one of my superintendents, "Jeff, Phil, they all listen to me. You're the only one that doesn't listen to me." I know. They're not supposed to listen to you. They're supposed to listen to me.
Exactly.
Not to you. This is what I do. This is all I know. This is my life. I'm not perfect, but that's why I've had so many mistakes here, because they listen to you. So whatever. You got me started. I was like, but yeah, no, and usually clients like that, there's a middleman. There's the owner's rep in between that is like the referee. And that's what is in Los Angeles a lot. And I find more of like all the larger projects have owners reps, and it's a small fee in the comparison of what they bring to the job. I mean, it's all about team. You have a good team and a good owners rep, what they bring is team, and a winning team is a good project, and everybody wins. Not just the homeowner with the best price in the world, but the best quality and a good price, a good value. You want good value, you want good timing, you want, and you get that usually with good organization and owners rep, and then homeowners, especially when you're dealing with the wealthier community, and a lot of them are in entertainment. They're used to building movies and studios, and we built this too much. You know what I mean? But they tear it down when they're done, or they save some of the panels for another day. So they bring a lot of logic to it. So that's one great thing in the industry. I surely, I prefer owners reps. A lot of contractors in town don't prefer owners reps. I prefer a good owners rep that puts the team first. Those are hard to come by too, though, because some owners reps, they want to just beat the price up, beat the schedule up. But that's my most challenging client that I'll be meeting here soon.
Good luck with that one now.
Yeah. Well, we're around in the corner. They're living in the house.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
It was kind of two-phase. We're around in the corner.
Yeah, that's always nice.
I don't think I'll be getting any references from him. Let's put it that way.
You might just have a good shake.
I think I might have told him off one too many times. Well, not told him off, but I mean, or I should say, This is really, I'm giving you a lot of the field, what it's really like in the field, and even in the biggest of the big jobs in Los Angeles, there's tables go flying. Sometimes you're dealing with a lot of manly men, and and that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
But the good thing is I've learned how to, before I used, now you ask questions and you follow up with paperwork, and nothing's better. A lot of our jobs we call them detailers. They take the architect's plans, the designer plans, and they detail the shop drawings and bring it all together. Because it's just gotten so complicated in the luxury building industry. There's so many more materials and parts, and it just goes on and on and on, which is it's never ending. And now with all the low voltage entertainment stuff, everything wants to work by your phones.
Yeah.
And then when the internet goes down, it's like,
what do you do? Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. You don't have Wi-Fi for like one day, and it seems like the whole world is ending. Like you can't
and it goes
talk to anyone.
Yeah, well, that's what happened with my my Brentwood job that just finished, the client's never in town, you know, like 2 times a year and he's calling up that day, and guess what goes down? Total 100%. I mean, we had to get the internet company, I think it's Nextel. It was a Nextel line, the main line coming in and somehow they were there within 2 hours, which never happens. But it happened the day the freaking owner was coming, not when. And that's usually what happens. And then a lot of projects I do, when I finish, they hire, like some of the owners reps have estate management. And so they hire like estate managers, even though, you know, some of the houses are like, 10,000 square feet. They're not like giant, 2 acres and stuff, but they take care of the properties. So they always test everything. And when the owner comes, something breaks every time, every freaking time. Like a day before they come, there's like a water line breaks or something leaks. And I think the last one was, the handhelds at the toilet. One of the connections was bad and dripped and went into the bathroom below. And that was just like the day before the owner comes, what happened to the ceiling? But go ahead.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's good that you're mentioning all these stories, because a lot of general contractors, they have in their head like, oh, Beverly Hills, those type of neighborhoods, custom building, that's like their dream, that's like their end goal, right? That's what they're working towards. Like that's like what a lot of GCs have in their head. But like I can already tell the clients that you have to work with, or the owners that you have to work with, is like there's so many issues that they have to be prepared for, and it's not just dreamland. And
No.
they don't just throw money at you and say, oh yeah,
No.
build me whatever you want.
No.
I mean,
my other job in
yeah.
Beverly Hills, yeah, I'm fine for every dime there. So yeah, there's a whole nother. It's a whole nother arena. The easiest neighborhoods. There's no easy thing. I don't even like using that word when cheap or easy. Cost effective is what I like to use, and a thorough process. Easy. Whenever a client says, they hear you say, I'm doing it the easier way, they think like they're getting cheap out. Or when my son or a subcontractor says, well, let's do it the easier way, it seems like it's just like a word I think you're using that's not the right way. I'm not looking for the easy way. I'm looking for the way that the designer wants it and that the architect wants it, and that will work. And that means it's going to be the easier way than fine. But I usually say, let's find the way that's going to work and work right. And that, because I know easy, I try not to, but definitely if you can, the easier way is working in Westchester.
Yeah.
And I think most like Westchester or contractors that come into like Beverly Hills or Bel Air in this arena, they go, most, it's just like anything. It's like you said, it's not easier. It's not, you don't make every penny you earn your money in this industry for sure. There's no, well, that's what my first 10 years, that's what I wanted to do. I was going to build America and become a gazillionaire. I don't want to get rich, you know what I mean? And then when I nearly worked myself to death and realized that, well, no, there is, this isn't how it works. You need to be more thorough, better on your pricing. There's no big killings, and just, give a fair price, have open books, so, my business is is an open book, what I mean? Matter of fact, I've been audited, not from Uncle Sam, but by not many clients, but an entertainment client audited me a couple times, and my one Brentwood client audited me like 3 times, and some of these guys, one of them just was, they were an owner's rep. They just wanted to here's one of the owner's reps you don't want to work with. They're like trying to prove themselves by trying to hey, look, they overbilled you 20 grand, or they just, so they, and this was like the 4th owner's rep for this company. Right. So it was so they went back all the way to the beginning when we weren't doing change orders. They were being done by emails. Approvals were by emails. So there was like $30,000 in heating and air conditioning that we didn't have this paper trail that he wanted. So I got you guys. And so I said, okay, well, I know they didn't put it in my house. Okay, so we'll take these invoices and we'll take the change orders that I signed with the sub, and we'll go walk the job. We'll go find this condenser. We'll go find this linear diffuser that's freaking 20 feet long, 2 inches, and the custom duct that had to go into it that cost $6,000. We'll go walk the job. We'll go point at that. And then you'll give me my money. Or actually, they already gave me the money. We're looking for money, not to pay me. So whatever. So I've been audited a lot, and I think one audit, because it was like time and material work and then fixed fee work, and I think they found like $800 that was in the wrong pot, and so we just had to shift it. So and when you play by the rules and play by being fair and play by or work by being fair and have open books and not try to make an extra dime here and there, that reputation follows you. And that's what I'm teaching my boys. That's what I teach the people that work for me, my controller, and then it makes life easier. I don't know why.
I mean
it was a lesson learned early on.
I mean that's a perfect way to lead on to the last question. It's not even a question I asked, but what we do on this podcast, and I've stolen it shamelessly from the Diary of a CEO podcast. I don't know if you ever heard of that one, but essentially what they do is they ask the guest at the end to ask a question for the guest that comes on next. So the last episode, Mr. Marshall Wilkinson, he had a question that he asked, which I've summarized it in my notes, but it's essentially, how do you ensure you give your customers the best service possible?
That's my question.
That's the question that the guest from last episode wanted to ask you. Bearing in mind, they didn't know who you were. Yeah.
Well, that's a hard journey sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, how do I ensure the best quality? Is that was the question? And longevity.
Yeah, quality. Yeah.
Quality, longevity.
Yeah.
That's a really great question. I mean, how do I really ensure that? I mean, first and foremost, you hire good subs. I mean, you start at the beginning. I mean, you start with picking your contractor. Are you picking your contractor by the best price? Are you picking your contractor with thorough investigation or thorough interviewing? Or are you just picking your contractor because he's good looking, or he built something for a friend of a friend? I think it starts with the client picking the right person. So you say I get interviewed, so I have now it's me because I'm awesome. No, I have my flaws, but I'm getting better. I get better with age.
Yeah.
That's the good thing about getting older, by the way. You just get better and better. But there's other shit that you got to deal with, though. Like at least my hair is kind of falling over. But answer your question. Okay, so answer the question is so then I hire good subs, and then we thoroughly check. I've taught my superintendents that the inspectors are part of our team. They're another set of eyes, checking on us. So you hire good subs, you don't cut corners, and I'm on the job a lot. I'm a field guy. I'm not an office guy. You mentioned earlier on about the, how complicated it gets, and it's freaking complicated. And I hire people to do that because I'm not a numbers man. I'm good with numbers, and up here, like I can look at a set of drawings and say, oh yeah, that's going to be between 4 million and 4,700,000, and 90% of the time, then the bid will come in at 5,200,000. You know what I mean? So I'm always within 10%. So I'm good with numbers, but in a different way. So you start off by hiring a good contractor. You hire good subcontractors. I usually, on most of my projects, I insist the homeowner hires a waterproofing consultant, because that's the number one thing in Los Angeles and California for lawsuits is water. So I have hire waterproofing consultant, which is sometimes a bigger pain in the ass for me because I have someone watching over me. But that all they're doing is watching out for the client, which watches out for me, because I subs don't get it all the time. I mean, sometimes you'll have it on the drawings and you'll have the sub working on it, and then they come back on Monday with a different foreman, or or the foreman is out sick with freaking COVID. You know what I mean? So that's where waterproofing consultants come in. So the more consultants that I get my client to hire on these, and there's a lot of them in these in the larger residential projects, and just my experience with crossing the T's and dotting the I's and hiring quality people. And when you make a mistake, owning the mistake and fixing it, and that's another thing. And when you fix it, it seems like, I mean, when you try to take the shortcut to fixing something, it always bites you, not on that second move, but on the fourth or fifth move down the road, that when you were trying to get it done, that you didn't vision it. So I tell the men that work for me that, you know, I'm a visionary. I see into the future. So like I still have to argue with my superintendent sometimes. No, this is the way it needs to be, and I shouldn't have to stand here and argue with you about it, because I see it further down the road. And that's where, you know, right now it's hard to get good superintendents in Los Angeles. I've lost my best one. So having good superintendents is another way I bring good quality to the client, and just knowing what the hell we're doing. I mean, and then
That's always helps. Yeah.
I hope I answered that question.
No, you definitely did. I think that was the best answer you could have given, because it covered the whole A to Z. That was amazing. Okay, then, if you could speak, let's just assume you were speaking to the next guest. What question would you want to ask them?
So the next guest, what are they? Another a contractor?
So they're a UK contractor, which is interesting. We've had so far one UK, two US, the other second US. We're gonna have another UK. So he's a UK contractor.
Gosh, what would I want to ask a UK contractor, or just any contractor? How do you end the job with a client? How do you close down a job with a client and be able to photograph it? How do you end peacefully and joyfully? I mean, how do you do that? I mean, seriously, think about it. How do you rah kumbaya with your client?
Yeah,
that's hard.
That's a great question. Yeah, because there's always like small things that they might not be happy about, or that they want to, you know,
it's never ending.
They don't want to leave. Yeah.
I have a client right now. I finished their house 3 years ago, and there's like a machine screw that I can't find that's bugging the crap out of her because it's on these steel doors. And I said, can't you just use your handyman? And she goes, oh, they can't find it. And I'm like going, so if I don't go find these, there's two of them, machine screws. If I don't go find these machine screws, when I put her on my reference, now I've gotten glowing references. I'm not going to get a glowing reference unless I go find these two freaking small screws. So that's my question to him. Rah, kumbaya, the job. I'm not sure if you
That's
have
an amazing question. Yeah.
No,
that's a great question. It's been amazing. We've actually ran over. I think we were.
Oh my goodness!
But you mentioned we might not be able to get through the hour, but we've actually gone like I think over 4 minutes. So thank you very much for hopping on, Gary. This has been a pleasure. I've learned so much from this 1 hour, and I'm certain the viewers have as well. It's not often you get this type of wisdom from someone who's been in the business for 40 odd years. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Go viral.
I really clips of it, like the story, and then the guy you were talking about might have seen it online. It's like, is he talking about me? I'm not sure. Sounds
but
like
I love my client though. I do. I love my client. I love my client. I love all my clients, and that's just the best way to handle it. And
it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that perfect. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Drop a like if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, follow the podcast. All of Gary's links will be in the description. You know how all that works. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. All the best.